Welcome back, everyone. Today we have something truly chilling for you. We're diving deep into the dark side of the internet, a place where desire and danger intertwine. Get ready for 3 terrifying tales of sugar daddies from hell. These are not just stories, they are real-life nightmares. So, grab your blankets, turn off the lights, and prepare to be spooked. We're about to uncover the terrifying truth behind these seemingly innocent arrangements. Our first story revolves around Sarah, a college student struggling to make ends meet. She was juggling her studies, part-time jobs, and the mounting pressure of student loans. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and Sarah found herself on a sugar dating app, a place where young women sought financial support from older, wealthier men. Hoping to find someone who could help alleviate her financial burdens, she created a profile and began her search. And then, she met him. A man who seemed to be the answer to all her problems.
He was everything I thought I ever wanted. Successful, charming, and oh so generous. He had an air of confidence that was intoxicating. He showered me with gifts, took me on lavish dates, and made me feel like a princess. Every moment with him felt like a dream. It was like a fairy tale, a whirlwind romance that swept me off my feet. I was completely enamored by his charm and generosity.
But fairy tales often have dark twists hidden beneath their shimmering surface. The perfect facade began to crack. At first it was just small, seemingly insignificant things, little red flags that were easy to ignore. He'd show up at her apartment unannounced, claiming he just wanted to surprise her. It seemed sweet at first, but then, he'd call her incessantly, demanding to know her every move. The constant attention became overwhelming. He'd get jealous when she spent time with her friends, accusing her of cheating on him. His possessiveness was suffocating.
I brushed it off as him being overly protective, thinking it was just a sign of how much he cared. Blinded by the fairy tale I had woven in my mind, I ignored the growing unease, but deep down, a seed of doubt began to sprout in my stomach. Something wasn't right. His behavior became increasingly erratic, his possessiveness suffocating. The man I thought I knew was changing.
He'd hack into her social media accounts, reading her private messages. His need for control was terrifying. He'd follow her, lurking in the shadows, always watching, always there. His eyes watching her every move, a constant reminder of his presence. The charming prince had transformed into a menacing stalker, trapping Sarah in a web of fear and manipulation. Her dream had become a nightmare.
One night, I found him outside my apartment, lurking in the shadows, his eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity, filled with a possessive rage. That's when I knew I had to escape. I couldn't live like this anymore. I broke things off with him, but he didn't take it well. His anger was palpable. The stalking intensified, the threats escalated, and I found myself living in a constant state of terror. Every shadow seemed to hide his presence. I feared for my life. The charming facade of my sugar daddy now a distant, horrifying memory. The fairy tale had turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from.
Our next story takes us into the opulent world of Emily, a young woman who found herself entangled with a sugar daddy who seemed too good to be true. Mark was the epitome of success. He was a self-made millionaire, with a penthouse apartment overlooking the city and a charming demeanor that could melt even the iciest of hearts. He promised Emily a life of luxury, a chance to escape her ordinary existence and indulge in the finer things in life. And for a while, he delivered on that promise.
Designer clothes, exotic vacations, extravagant gifts, I had it all.
But beneath the surface of Mark's perfect facade lurked a dark secret, a sinister obsession that would soon rear its ugly head. It began subtly, with Mark expressing possessiveness over Emily's time and friendships. He'd shower her with guilt trips if she dared to spend time with anyone but him. He'd monitor her phone calls, her emails, her every move.
Blinded by the luxurious lifestyle I had become accustomed to, I dismissed these red flags as mere quirks of a successful, albeit slightly controlling man.
But the situation took a sinister turn when Emily discovered a hidden camera in her apartment. It was strategically placed, capturing her most intimate moments. Panic surged through her as she realized the extent of Mark's deception. The man she thought she knew, the one who had promised her the world, was nothing more than a predator preying on her vulnerability.
Fear propelled me to confront Mark, my voice trembling as I demanded answers.
But instead of remorse, she was met with a cold, calculating stare that sent shivers down her spine. Mark's carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the monster that lay beneath.
I confessed to installing cameras throughout her apartment, to tracking her every move, to possessing a disturbing obsession with her.
Terrified and disgusted, Emily knew she had to escape Mark's clutches before it was too late. She fled his penthouse that night, leaving behind the life of luxury that had become her gilded cage. The opulence that once dazzled her now felt like chains, binding her to a man who saw her as nothing more than a possession. As she ran through the city streets, the weight of her realization pressed down on her. She had traded her freedom for a mirage of happiness, and now she was determined to reclaim it. The night air was cold, but it was a welcome contrast to the suffocating warmth of Mark's world. Emily knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. She was free, and she would never let herself be trapped again. Chapter 3. Our final story centers around Ashley, a young woman who stumbled into the world of sugar dating seeking financial stability and companionship. She was a recent college graduate, burdened with student loans and struggling to make ends meet. The idea of sugar dating seemed like a lifeline, a way to navigate her financial woes while also finding someone who could offer her emotional support.
I met David, an older man who seemed kind, generous, and understanding. He was charming and had a way of making me feel special, like I was the only person in the room. His attention was intoxicating, and I found myself drawn to his confidence and the sense of security he exuded. He offered me a simple arrangement, companionship in exchange for financial assistance. It seemed straightforward, almost too good to be true. We discussed the terms openly, and he assured me that there would be no hidden expectations or pressures.
There were no expectations, no pressure, just a mutually beneficial agreement between two consenting adults. It was a relief to find someone who respected my boundaries and seemed genuinely interested in my well-being. Just a mutually beneficial agreement between two consenting adults. We shook hands, sealing the deal, and I felt a sense of hope for the first time in months. At first, everything was perfect. Our arrangement worked seamlessly, and I began to feel more secure in my life. The financial burden that had weighed so heavily on me started to lift, and I could finally breathe a little easier.
David treated me with respect, our dates were pleasant, and he kept his word, providing me with the financial support he had promised. We would go to fancy restaurants, attend cultural events, and even take short trips together. It felt like a dream, and he kept his word, providing me with the financial support he had promised. I started to believe that maybe this arrangement could be a long-term solution. I convinced myself that this was just a business arrangement, a way to achieve my goals without compromising my values. I told myself that I was in control, that I could walk away at any time if things went south.
But as time went on, the lines began to blur. What started as a clear-cut agreement began to feel more like a traditional relationship, with all its complexities and emotional entanglements. David became increasingly possessive, demanding more of Ashley's time and attention. He would call and text constantly, wanting to know where she was and who she was with.
He'd shower me with lavish gifts, each one more extravagant than the last. At first it felt like a fairy tale, but soon, the gifts started to feel like chains, binding me to him, guilt-tripping me into spending more time with him. He'd remind me of all he had done for me, making me feel indebted and obligated to reciprocate his generosity. He'd make subtle threats about withdrawing his financial support if I didn't meet his demands. The once kind and understanding man I had met was now using his power over me to control my life.
Ashley found herself trapped in a web of her own making, the innocent arrangement she had convinced herself of now morphing into something dark and controlling. She felt like a prisoner, her every move monitored and dictated by David. The innocent arrangement she had convinced herself of now morphing into something dark and controlling. The freedom she had once felt was now replaced with a sense of dread and entrapment.
One evening, David took me to a secluded cabin in the woods. He said it was a surprise, a romantic getaway just for the two of us. I wanted to believe him, to think that maybe this was his way of making things right. He claimed it was a romantic getaway, a chance for us to spend some quality time together. The cabin was beautiful, rustic and isolated, surrounded by dense forest. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. The isolation, the way David's eyes seemed to darken, it all felt wrong.
The isolation of the cabin, the intensity in David's eyes, the possessive grip he had on her arm, it all screamed danger. Ashley's instincts were on high alert, sensing that something terrible was about to happen. As the night wore on, David's true intentions became horrifyingly clear. His demeanor shifted, the charming facade crumbling to reveal a menacing and dangerous man.
He became aggressive, his demeanor shifting from charming to menacing in the blink of an eye. The man who once made me feel safe was now a threat, his eyes filled with a terrifying mix of anger and entitlement. He tried to force himself on me, his words slurred with a toxic mix of entitlement and rage. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and his grip tightened painfully on my arm.
Terrified, Ashley fought back with every ounce of strength she could muster. She knew that if she didn't escape, she might not get another chance. She managed to break free from his grasp and flee into the darkness of the surrounding woods. The cold night air stung her lungs, but she didn't stop, driven by sheer survival instinct.
I ran until my lungs burned and my legs screamed for mercy. The branches scratched at my skin, and the uneven ground threatened to trip me with every step. The sounds of David's enraged shouts echoing through the trees behind me. His voice was filled with fury, and I knew I had to keep running no matter what.
These chilling tales serve as a stark reminder that the internet can be a dangerous place, and not everyone is who they seem. Remember, not everything that glitters is gold. The allure of a luxurious lifestyle, the promise of financial security, the charm of a seemingly perfect partner, these can all be deceptive masks, concealing sinister intentions. Stay safe out there, and always trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And if you ever find yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable, don't hesitate to reach out for help. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more chilling stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.